Good evening and welcome to the Sound Off Show. My name is Linda Kirker. I host the program, and thanks so much for joining us tonight. I think we got a touch of spring, and I think there might be more coming, so just be patient. And you notice there are a few things budding up from the ground, and we have some indicators. I saw a few birds flying around my property, so I think there's hope. Even though it's Vermont. I just wanted to start the program before I introduce my guest. This is a little message to the people that we have elected to represent us. In particular, I'll refer to the representatives in the state of Vermont and the senators. We, the people of Vermont, would like to remind you of the oath you swore upon taking office. In particular, you do solemnly swear you will not propose or assent to any bill, vote, or resolution which shall appear to you injurious to the people. Think taxes. Nor consent to any act or thing whatever that shall have a tendency to lessen or abridge their rights and privileges. Think of all the gun legislation. We have Second Amendment right, as declared by the Constitution of this state, but will in all things conduct yourself as a faithful, honest representative of the people. A representative of the people. Not of lobbyists or special interest groups or anything else, but the people of the state. And I was going to continue on about the healthcare issue, but I'll let that go because my guest is going to be talking about healthcare with me tonight. And with that, I would like to introduce her. She's new to the program, and her name is Dorothy Bolduc. Welcome. Good to have you here. And you're from St. Albans.
Yes, I am.
A long time.
Right. Lifetime resident of St. Albans, Vermont.
Okay. And you wanted to come on to talk about healthcare and your observations and conclusions with your experiences in the healthcare field.
That's correct.
So why don't you just share a little bit with us, Dorothy, tell us your history with healthcare.
Well, first of all, I'd like to mention that I'm married and I have 5 children and
Wow.
8 grandchildren and another grandchild on the way.
Wow. So
And-
you care a lot about healthcare.
Yes, I do. And my husband and I, for 44 years, ran and operated and owned the Napoli Home for the Aged, which is a licensed residential care facility for vulnerable adults. Level 3 is just below nursing home care. They're people who need help taking care of themselves, but they are not sick and they do not need to be in nursing home care.
Okay, so they can function pretty well with their activities of daily living?
Yes.
Or they may need assistance?
Yes, they need assistance, and we did medication overview, administration, we provided meals, we did the laundry, we took them to their doctor's appointments, so I had a lot of contact with hospitals and doctors and different needs of vulnerable adults.
Well, that's interesting. That must have been quite, and you did that for?
44 years. We
Wow.
retired 3.5 years ago.
Wow. Where was that located?
That was in Sheldon, Vermont.
Okay, all right. Well, I'd like to have you share some of your, observations and some of your conclusions and thoughts about where we are now and what you've seen in the past and what you perceive, is going to be happening. Wherever you want to start, Dorothy.
Well, I've been concerned about healthcare, the rising cost of healthcare since 1977.
Wow.
And I've been very actively involved in the process. And all this time, decades, we have not solved the problem of the rising cost of health care. So I brought this little wheel along to demonstrate this, the hub of the wheel is our economy.
Okay.
But healthcare has risen faster than inflation for decades. And so this is healthcare costs. And these spokes represent different things that make healthcare go up.
Okay.
And whenever you talk about healthcare and you're on a program, people will call in and bring up various issues. But these issues have been going on for over 3 decades, and nobody has resolved them yet. Not Governor Shumlin, not anybody, not President Obama. We still have all the same problems. Nothing has been solved. And healthcare is now a product that nobody can afford. As a government, we cannot afford healthcare, and as individuals, we cannot afford healthcare.
Well, there are a lot of facets to that. We have a lot more people in this country, I would say, who are dependent on other people supporting their health care needs. In other words, they're people who are not employed. We have people coming into this country illegally. There are now millions of them who are promised the moon, health care, education, you name it, right? So who's going to pay for that?
Right.
Let alone the rest of us.
Well, I wanted a system, a healthcare system that would be fair to everybody. And I don't think the single payer system was that system. I knew that system would fail because we could not afford it. It costs money to take care of everybody, and I think everybody should be taken care of. However, I was in a personal position that we didn't have any health insurance, yet I was taking care of people. That's a very important job, taking care of people. And I couldn't afford health care for myself. So I was seeing, I think God put me in these shoes so that I could see what was going on. And I could see all the services that people on Medicaid were getting while I went without. Also, I was forced, because we're property owners, to pay for the teachers' health care insurance, to pay for municipal workers' health care insurance, and I couldn't have any. And when we had medical bills, they say we get it for free. We never got any health care services for free. We always had to pay the highest amount of anybody because of cost shifting.
Well, it's about 30%, I think.
Yes, 40% now, they say. 40%. It used to be 30%, but now they say 40%. Medicaid only pays 60% of the cost. This is what the hospitals and doctors say.
Well, and I think that's pretty accurate. So folks, the viewers who are watching, for those of you who don't grasp that right now, what that means is that when government programs provide the money for health care for certain individuals, let's say for the people on Medicaid, not Medicare, which is for the elderly, but Medicaid, which is for the lower income folks, then the government program only pays a certain percentage of what the actual costs are to provide the care. And so somehow the providers of health care, the hospitals, the doctors, et cetera, need to get the money that they're investing in providing the care. So what happens is the people who are working and have insurance through an employer, or who are self-insured, then those people's premiums go higher to make up for the difference for what the government is not paying for people on Medicaid. And so that amounts to at least 30% of the coverage for Medicaid patients is on the backs of the rest of the working people, the self-insured, and so forth.
Well, in the 1980s, the government thought healthcare costs was rising too fast. This would be the federal government. And they asked healthcare providers to control their costs, but the healthcare providers refused to do that. So the federal government put a cap on Medicaid spending. And so the providers said, okay, we'll accept this cap, but we'll raise the price to everybody else. And that's what they did. Now, I think that that was a very unethical maneuver. Now, because we were involved in healthcare ourselves, we did not charge anybody more than the Medicaid rate because we were providing the same service to all of our residents. Why should we charge some people more simply because they could pay more than what we were getting for people on Medicaid? Now, it was difficult, but we did that because we thought it was unethical to charge some people more than for the same service, for the exact same service. Why should you charge them more? You don't go to the store and buy a couch and charge some people one price, another people another price.
Right.
So why should hospitals do that? Now, when they did this, I don't have lobbyists. I don't have people protecting me. But the hospitals do. They have a lot of influence. They're special interest groups, and so they get all kinds of help, but the individual got no help.
Well, you bring up a lot of good points. You mentioned at one moment single-payer health care.
Yes.
That's government-controlled, government-paid health care, one size fits all, okay? What does that do? That eliminates choice. It eliminates the private sector. So that means, like when Howard Dean was governor, I just came into the legislature in 2000, and he was there for 2 more years. And what happened during his tenure, it was 10 years, I think it was, 8 or 10 years, is that they did community rating and let me see, what's the other?
That's right, Linda, and that's when we lost our insurance. We did have health insurance at one time.
Guaranteed issue.
But it got too expensive for us. And then we had Blue Cross and Blue Shield, but Blue Cross and Blue Shield became too expensive for us. So we looked around and we found an insurance company who would reward us for having healthy lifestyles. And that was called Golden Rule Health Insurance. And because of Governor Dean and community rating, they forced, I can't say they forced these companies out of the state. The companies willingly left because they didn't want to, they say I'm wrong when I say they forced them out. But they took away my choice of health insurance.
The other thing is...
And they put me in a safety net, Linda. And they said, we will only raise your rates 15% from what Golden Rule was charging you every year. So in 3 years, our rates had gone up 45%, and we had to drop our insurance.
Well, this Vermont, compared to other states, is a small population, all right? There were, I'm going to say 12. There might have been more. But there were 12 insurance companies in this state before the legislature and the administration decided that community rating and guaranteed issue would be implemented in the state. And when the vast majority of those insurance companies looked at what that was going to do to their business, they decided they couldn't afford to do business in Vermont, and they left. That left us with 3 companies, Blue Cross, Cigna, and MVP.
Right.
Now we're down to 2.
Right.
Blue Cross Blue Shield and MVP, if I'm not mistaken. So the choice, the options. This country was founded on freedom, on responsibility, on choice, and empowerment of the individual. And now we have big government taking over. We'll deal with health care. And look what's happened. In fact, Dottie, here's something that fits right in. H100 and S88 are injurious bills and are not what the people of Vermont want. A major argument for universal health care is that you shouldn't have to go bankrupt if you get sick. 4 states at this time that this was sent out, 4 states had passed universal health care bills: Massachusetts, Maine, Tennessee, and Hawaii. The legislation has led to near bankruptcy in all of these states because the states are trying to fund it, okay? And it's not doable. What is worse, an individual going bankrupt or an entire state? Enacting universal health care in Vermont is going to economically destroy our state and create an unbearable tax burden on us, the taxpayers. Look at the facts. Endless repetition of a failed concept will not lead to success. And then there's more that goes on.
Well, it's like I said, we have a service that nobody can afford. We cannot afford health care. We cannot afford to provide it to all of the people that we're providing it to now. Mm-hmm. And we want to increase the number of people that we're providing care to. Now they want to provide help for people who are making $40,000 to $90,000 a year income. And they want to increase the subsidies for these people in that income range. And that is far too generous. We cannot afford to do that.
Well, just to bring another perspective, if you're a family of 4,
yes,
with children, with 2 children and 2 parents, today, in today's world, I don't think $75,000 or $80,000 is a lot of money to try to, in today's world, to try to raise children, pay a mortgage. Just go to the grocery store, let alone, car payments and all the other things. That I don't think that's a lot of money. To some people, it may sound like a lot of money, but when you add in what the expenses of 4 people, that's not a lot in today's world. We grew up in a different world.
Well, I agree with that. It is more difficult for families today. They do need more money.
What about this scenario? What about the state get out of the way with all the regulations and the taxes and let the business community thrive? All yes. right? So then you have more jobs for residents of the state. You have you go back to the private enterprise in the healthcare field so that people have choices. Oh, okay, I'm a single person. Here are my needs. This is the kind of insurance I want. This is what I can afford. This is what I'll buy. Instead of the state mandating everything for everybody. And what's happened to timing? How long do you wait to see a doctor? And, it's boom, 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 boom. Unless you're really lucky, you get 15 minutes or whatever, and you're out of there. And doctors, what has happened in Franklin County? Doctors can no longer afford, they don't get reimbursed enough from Medicare or Medicaid, so they can't afford the overhead of their private offices that they've had when we had different insurance companies paying more to them.
But as you add more and more people to the Medicaid rolls, that leaves less people, fewer people, to pay for the insurance,
Absolutely.
Which is what's going on now.
Right.
So the price goes up.
Mm-hmm.
Now, part of the single payer plan was to have the Green Mountain Care Board, which would regulate and oversee health care costs and would help drive down costs. But have you seen them driving down costs? No, Blue Cross and Blue Shield's rates went up 7%. It was more than 7%, less than 8%. I guess they wanted 11%, but the Green Mountain Care Board knocked it down to 7.5%. If they really cared about controlling healthcare costs, they would not have allowed Blue Cross and Blue Shield to have such a large increase. Blue Cross and Blue Shield needed to raise its rates because they had fewer people buying regular insurance, because they had more people on Medicaid. So I understand that.
Yeah.
To
stay in business.
I don't have any qualms with our hospital and our doctors. I think our local hospital is doing a great job trying to provide services that the community can afford. Now, the Green Mountain Care Board takes bows for reducing healthcare costs. However, I just think it was the general financial situation of the state of Vermont that the hospitals realized we can't continue to keep raising our prices.
Well, we're not in good financial straits in this state.
No, we are not.
The policies of the state, the regulations and the taxes and the unfriendly environment have made it very difficult for businesses to thrive, and therefore, well, what have we lost?
Well,
we
now
lost Pennies,
yes,
Staples,
all right.
Eveready Battery. IBM, when I lived there, had 8,000 employees. Now I don't know if they have 3,000 now. I don't know what's left. But it's supposedly this new global foundries, whatever it is, that bought it. They're from Thailand or somewhere. Looks like they're hiring. They're looking for employees, so maybe that's a good thing. But there are a lot of moving parts, Dottie. A lot of moving parts, and they all fit into the puzzle. And now you probably read that the state of Vermont has been increasing costs, education, health care, and programs.
A lot of the property tax costs are health care benefits for the teachers. They have the Cadillac of plans.
That's
and
true.
What's coming down in the future is President Obama did not want people to have Cadillac plans, so he's going to find people who have Cadillac plans. I believe it's $2,000 if you have a Cadillac plan. So I asked our state representatives, who's going to pay that fine of $2,000 for every teacher and every municipal worker? And they said the taxpayer is going to do that.
Oh.
And that starts in 2017. So that's going to add to our property taxes.
Now, I heard this may be a different thing, but it sounds like it's aligned with what you just said, that every teacher would have to pay $1,000 a year.
But it's not the teacher that's going to pay
And that was the question, and the answer was what you said. The teachers won't pay it.
No.
The taxpayers won't
That's
pay
right.
it. And I think, I've said this many times before, Dottie, I think that teaching is one of the most critically important jobs that anybody can have when it comes to preparing our young people to be productive citizens, respectful, patriotic, productive citizens. Now, I'm not sure that's what's happening in our schools. I know it isn't, but in many cases, but I don't fault the teachers for that. That's the federal government stepping in with
Right. We have, when you talk about healthcare, you can talk about state policies, and then there's the federal policies, which is complicating things. But look what our government is talking about now. I'm talking about the state of Vermont. They're talking about putting a tax on candy. They're talking about putting a tax on sweetened beverages. they're talking about punishing people for being obese by taxing things that they like instead of rewarding them for having and choosing healthy lifestyles.
Yeah.
Now, who gets the money for these taxes that the government wants to pass? It's not going to. It's
You know
going
where
to
it's
go
going?
to. It's going to go to the doctors, and it's going to go to the hospitals.
The money from these taxes, like the candy tax, I just read this, is going partly into the education fund
Oh.
and partly into the general fund.
Uh-huh.
Now, we
Well, that's
are,
the candy tax. That's something new. But
Yeah.
the beverage tax was
I
supposed
don't know.
was
I don't
supposed
know.
to go to help educate people against obesity. And now, well, let's see, there's another
You
tax.
don't need a tax.
Service tax. They're talking about
Oh, yeah.
having a service tax
Yeah.
now. I mean, small businesses are having enough problems as it is.
Yeah.
And they want to put a service tax on
On
small
accountants
yes,
and,
hairdressers, lawnmowers, but they want to have an exemption for education and for health care. They won't have to pay this tax.
those are the two fastest growing entities.
And they're the ones who need money the least, as far as I'm concerned. As far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Well,
And now Governor Shumlin wants to address cost shifting by raising rates for Medicaid. And he claims this is going to make insurance rates go down. I don't believe him. This is not going to happen. Insurance rates, unless they put it right in the law that says, okay, we will increase Medicaid rates, but you can't increase insurance rates. Well, then he changes it to, well, he's not going to decrease the rate, he's going to decrease the amount it rises.
that's still, it's still raising
It's an
it.
increase.
Sure it is.
It's an increase. And who pays for Medicaid to begin with? It's the taxpayer.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we have,
so my plan,
Go ahead.
I have a plan.
okay.
And my plan is to say no to cost shifting. I agree with Governor Shumlin. We should have one rate for all medical services. We should charge everybody the same rate. And since they don't seem to want to do that, Linda, and anybody that I've talked to, they want the government to be in control of health care. That's
not
what they want.
That's not a good idea.
No, it is not.
That's your life and
Now,
death.
if you want people to be in charge of their own health care, then they should say, I refuse to pay for the cost shift. I refuse to pay more than what our government pays. Is our government wrong to only pay the Medicaid rate? If they're wrong, they should fix it. The government should fix it, not put it on the backs of individual people.
Here's the problem.
Yes.
Here's the problem. We are the government.
That's right.
We are the ones who pay for the increased subsidization of Medicaid. So we're either going to pay in a cost
One
shift
way or the
we're
other.
going to pay.
That's right.
But here's the thing, and you alluded to this earlier. Here's the thing that would work. First of all, you don't need to raise taxes to motivate people, to educate people at least. They may have to motivate themselves. But to provide information about being healthy and how to be healthy. Now, legislating health, good health, doesn't work. Because if you've ever tried to lose weight or to stop smoking or whatever it might be, it isn't easy. It takes a lot of inner strength and determination and effort. And what has to happen is that we have to find a way, as you said, to reward people with a lower premium if they stop smoking, and they can prove that. And if they lose weight, or if we lose weight.
And wear their seat belts and don't use
That's the positive.
abuse alcoholic beverages
Yes.
and opiates and
Yes.
stuff like that.
That
But-
that's the. But if they don't have anything invested in the game, if they don't have a horse in the chute or whatever, if what is the term? A horse in the game or whatever, then there's no incentive for them to try to be healthier.
Right. Well, my plan, which is saying I'm not going to pay more than Medicaid, maybe it'll take a class action suit to say what the government is doing is not fair to individuals like myself. Or we could use the Common Benefits Clause of the Vermont Constitution, which says that the government is or ought to be instituted for the common benefit, protection, and security of the people, nation, or community, and not for the particular emolument or advantage of any single man, family, or set of men who are a part of that community.
Right.
In other words, providing people with Medicaid is
It's a separate group.
it's a separate group, and it should be either for everybody or for nobody. If you're going to do it, it should be for everybody. And if you aren't, then imagine
well,
if
you
we
don't want to
didn't.
be on Medicaid.
Imagine if we didn't have any programs like Medicaid or Medicare. Do you think healthcare costs would be as high as they are today? If we didn't have insurance, if we didn't have the middleman, and the doctor had to tell you what it was going to cost you to see him for 3 minutes, do you think he'd be charging as much as he does?
Well, probably not, because it would be between you and him, not a whole host of other people who are in a system. Now, this brings up another point. You mentioned this presentation that we both happened to be at.
Yes.
What was it called?
On the mend.
On the Mend. And that was really interesting. It was in Burlington a few weeks ago. And what was interesting was that there were varying presentations about different ways to present health care. I think there was a man was he from Kansas? I can't remember exactly where he was from. A doctor who makes a contract with his patients. And the patients agree to pay him so much a year on a monthly basis for their family's health or for their individual health. And he has more time to spend with them. He talks with them about what's going on in their lives and so forth, so that you can give you get a better perspective on what a person's dealing with. And
Right. And they forego taking Medicaid payments and Medicare payments. They have nothing to do with that, so
It's
they
all
don't
pay
have
for-
the overhead of all the stuff that they have to do, all the paperwork that they have to do.
fee for service.
Right. Now,
And he says it's working like a charm. There are 3 doctors in the practice, and they all have these contracts. They have, more and more people wanting to buy into that, which I thought was a novel idea. And why shouldn't they be allowed to do that?
right. Well, one of the people that really interested me at that conference was the guy who has the open MRI. I thought I had his name here, but I can't. It's Krumer, I think. He has an open MRI facility in Burlington, and he charges a lot less than the hospitals for an MRI, and he has the same radiologists as the hospitals. But if you compared prices, I think he said his was $600.
Is that the one?
It was Krumer.
Okay.
He charges $600 for an MRI, and the medical center of UVM, whatever you want to call it now, the Fletcher Allen, charges over $2,000 for the same MRI, which is read by the same radiologist.
But look, the hospital has all the overhead.
Right. But
It's a
this,
mammoth.
this man who runs this facility needs to get a certificate of need from the Green Mountain Care Board, and he said he has spent $50,000 trying to get a certificate of need from the Green Mountain Care Board, and he has spent a year of his time trying to get a certificate of need.
No kidding.
And he has to prove that his MRI facility is not going to hurt other hospitals. Well, how can he do that? How can he do that? Now, why don't we offer people choices? I mean, wouldn't you go to a place that cost $1,000 less for an MRI, even if
Sure.
it meant traveling 30 miles?
Sure. It saves the whole system money.
Yes. So yep.
Well,
So anyways,
I-
this puts the power, by saying no to cost shifting, it puts the power into the hands of the people. Now let's say you're on Medicare, and Medicare pays 80% of the cost. So you still get stuck with 20% of the bill. However, if you say no to cost shifting, you wouldn't owe anything. You would already be overpaying for the service. The same service that Medicaid people get. So this would help. You wouldn't need supplemental insurance. How does this new, how do people who are on Medicare get help, or government help from the state of Vermont if they're on Medicare? There's no help for them. Regardless of what, unless they qualify for Medicaid, there's no help for them. So their income could be far less than $40,000 to $90,000 a year, but there's no help for them. And that's not right.
no. Well,
So it puts the power back into the hands of the people. And if people would join together and do this,
yeah.
I'm just offering this out as a suggestion. If people would do this, why? I think it's unethical of the hospital to charge, or healthcare providers to charge different rates for the same service. It's just totally and Linda, as a business, we only charged one rate
Well,
because it was the ethical thing to do.
Dottie, the whole system is broken.
Yes, it is. And it's a
And
system we
they're
can't
caught
afford.
in the web, just like the
we got a
teachers are. We
call.
have a caller. Welcome to the program, caller. What's on your mind?
Everything. Good to see Dorothy there again, Linda.
Thank you. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Couple comments.
Sure.
We were talking about the MRI procedure. You know, there are many, many surgeons in Burlington who will not accept that MRI from that other facility that you were speaking of.
Oh, really?
Oh, absolutely. I had one there, and the doctor who was going to operate on me would not accept it, and I had to have another one in Burlington.
Well, isn't
They will
that?
not accept that. Many of them. I'm sure there are some that do, but there are many surgeons who will not accept that guy's work,
Wow.
Well,
and I don't know why.
Well, if they do accept it, well, I'm not an expert on MRIs, nor much of anything else, but I would like to think that an MRI in one place, if they're equivalent equipment, would be equal. But then, I don't know.
One would think so.
well,
But I'm telling you, there are surgeons who do not accept it.
yes, and there are surgeons who do not accept MRIs done at the Northwest Medical Center either.
Absolutely. You're right, Dorothy.
You have to get it done in Burlington because they want the business.
They want the money.
That's right. And they want to charge you over $1,000 more than, say, the Northwest Medical Center or Porter Hospital.
Okay, so maybe we should all go down to Montpelier and have a hearing before the Health and Welfare Committee. And
Well, you used to be on that, didn't you?
I
Were you?
was.
Another comment. I'd like to run this by you, your wisdom that you possess, you two ladies. I have thought for a long, long time that the greatest burden to the taxpayers in St. Albans or any other place for that matter is the education cost.
It's huge.
How would you feel? You're both homeowners, and I know where you both live. How about if we eliminated the exemptions in the sales tax and paid for our education costs for that and eliminated no school tax for you and your home? Would you be willing to go along with that?
Well, what is the alternative to pay for the schools?
Do away with the exemptions in the present sales tax. In other words, all the junk and all the stuff that's exempt today, eliminate that and charge it. But we don't have a school tax for you in your home anymore.
Okay, so that means that along with homeowners not having the school tax, everybody pays the increased sales tax,
That's right.
which is it's an equalizer.
Not an increased sales tax. It's taking. Let me give you an example. And
Like
this is a very, very, very touchy example.
Okay.
A farmer goes into George S. Wood's tire shop down here on Federal Street tomorrow morning. And he says to Mr. Wood down there, put this tire on a rim for me. I got to take that back to the farm and put it on a vehicle of some sort. And Mr. Wood does that, certainly. Not breaking any law, that's what he's supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
The farmer leaves and says, oh, by the way, that's an agriculture exemption. Mr. Wood has no choice but to exempt that from taxation under the present statute.
Mm-hmm.
Baler twine on our farms is tax exempt presently. Isn't that kind of silly?
Mm-hmm.
The greatest problem that we have today is funding education. Let's face it. It's driving our older folks out of their homes.
That's
they're
for
on
sure.
fixed incomes.
That's for sure.
I'm asking you, as two very knowledgeable ladies, would you swap your school tax that you're paying and pay with no exemptions on the sales tax? Would you do that today?
Oh, I don't think, personally, I don't think I purchase many things that are exempt. But I can promise you this, whatever method is used to compensate for taking away the property tax is going to escalate. And maybe you'll find other things. The real, I like the way you're thinking. You know, you are thinking, which is good, because I think a lot of people don't even give this, a moment's notice. And we need more people who think these things through and try to think of alternatives. We have to get to the heart, first and foremost, of why the costs for education are so high and why they have escalated in recent years. If I'm not mistaken, in the late 90s and around 2000, the per pupil cost was around $9,000, let's say.
That's right.
Now it's, I believe, 16 or more, 18.
Yes.
And we have 21,000 fewer students than we had in 1998 when they initiated Act 60. So what is it that we're doing in our schools? We're adding 2, 3, and 4-year-olds. We have all kinds of ancillary people working in the schools. When you and I were in school, what was it? It was the teacher and 25 students and no one else. Now you have, are you still there?
Yeah, well, sure.
Okay, good. You have all kinds of other folks working in the schools. And I think we've overcompensated, and we need to get, first of all, down to the basics of what's the purpose of education, and what do the taxpayers who are paying the bill want taught in the schools. And
well, my suggestion, if you went along with my idea of eliminating the eliminations or the exemptions, if you will,
Yeah.
and funded education that way, then you'd have a per pupil. Let's say St. Albans has 100 kids. You're going to get $9,000 apiece, folks. Do what you want with it. Now, if you want to spend more than the $9,000 I'm going to give you from this revenue we're generating here,
Mm-hmm.
that's up to you locally. Don't come whining to me anymore. If you want to spend 12 and I'm willing to give you 9,
Mm-hmm.
go ahead and spend your 12. Don't come to me for the 3.
Well, that's
That's what you got to do. You got to take a hard line on this at the same time. I understand that.
yes. Well, there is something that's been bandied about and actually is in effect right now, and I can't give you it in detail, but I know that for communities that spend over a certain amount,
Yeah.
they pay a penalty.
Yeah, they do. But not to the extent that you want to correct.
Exactly.
No, it doesn't do that. I don't know all the reasons for the high cost of education. I wish I was smart enough to know that. I'm not.
Well, part of it is, I don't know about you, but no one else paid for my retirement but me. I'm paying for the teacher's retirement. I'm paying for teacher and state employees' retirement and health care. And many of them are making more than my income.
Right.
So what's wrong with that picture?
What, that they're paying,
That I'm paying.
you're getting Social Security, aren't you?
Yes.
Yeah, are you not?
Yes.
Well, then other folks are paying for some of your Social Security as
Well, I'll tell you what, you've seen the facts on if you take all the years you worked and what you and your employer put in on your behalf, you don't get anywhere near that before you
I
die.
understand that. I understand that. Your employer pays a share.
As a benefit of your employment.
You know, Linda, 100 years ago, we had school teachers teaching for free tomatoes and cucumbers from the farmer's garden. Don't do that anymore.
No. And
And I'll tell you what, and I'm not sticking up for the teachers. Teachers have got some problems, and they ought to start correcting those.
yeah.
But if a person had to stand in a classroom today and face these kids that these teachers face today, they'd quit in 20 minutes.
I agree with you 100%, and this brings up we're a little bit off of the healthcare, but that's okay.
But
Yeah.
I don't agree with that at all because the work that I did was very difficult, taking care of vulnerable adults, and I didn't get paid anywhere near as much as a teacher gets. So I don't buy
But you
that.
set the rates,
Yes, but
right?
yeah, we did.
Yeah.
So I just don't buy that.
Well-
I don't buy, and if it's difficult for the teachers today,
It's not the teacher's fault, but they have to deal with the situation. And this takes me to another one of my favorite topics, and that is, and I've posed this to some of our legislators. Okay, so put me in the position, and I've been a single mom for a few years in my life. You're a single mom, you have 2 or 3 children, you are receiving every possible benefit from housing to food to education to weatherization, you name it, okay? Food stamps or EBT cards. And what they're telling us is that could equal a salary of $42,000 a year, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, where is the obligation, the responsibility of that parent to ensure that their children are prepared to go to school, they've been taught how to behave, they know they're there to learn, to be, teach them to be respectful. What are the obligations for all of this money that is coming into this household?
Good question.
What are the responsibilities? What is this? Just a freebie from your neighbors? Where's the appreciation? And I think that the state needs to implement something like that. I don't begrudge people who are having a hard time. Don't misunderstand me. There are people who need not a hammock but a trampoline help to get out of the place that they're in. And I think there are times when we have to help people, but it's not meant to be a lifestyle forever, unless you're totally incapable, unable.
Well, when people get health care benefits, they're receiving a huge amount of money, but they don't appreciate it because they just use it and they don't have to pay for it. And they don't realize how much they are getting.
Mm-hmm. Because no one's teaching them that.
Right.
And when you have an obligation, you know, I was taught a strong work ethic when I was growing up. You probably were too. And thank God for that, because that got me through tough times in life where I learned how to depend on myself. But we're not doing that today. We're spoon feeding too many people, including children. Why I'm on a tirade now. Now you got me going. Why when we have EBT cards and Martha's Kitchen and food banks and churches that help out and everything, there's food galore. Why are we feeding children breakfast and lunch and after school at taxpayer expense? I don't get it. Can you answer me?
No.
So part of my health care plan was that if everybody gets health care, everybody has to pay for it. And that includes people who are on welfare, and nobody should think that health care is free, because it isn't. Somebody has to pay for it. Also,
It's
I
education.
know we're running out of time.
Oh, yeah.
I wrote a paper. It's only 3 pages long. And if
Oh,
anybody...
hang up, lady.
Hey,
I
listen.
I just wanted to ask you that question.
Yeah.
That's all.
I appreciate. I'll think about that. Thank you.
We're going to do away with the exemptions, but we're also going to reduce your school taxes.
I don't
to
think
zero.
doing away with the exemptions would be
Generate-
enough. Yeah, generate enough money to pay for
I don't know.
I
Darn
don't-
close to it.
You know what? Contact some of your, like Carolyn Brannigan, who's on Ways and Means,
I
and
have.
Kathy Keenan, who's on.
Yep. I know them well. I served with them.
Okay, good. Well, call them up and ask them to get the facts.
I did. I talked to our senators back in early December.
Get their facts and figures,
Right.
and then
Well-
we'll see what logic there is.
Linda, you've been there. You know what change takes down there.
Oh, it's terrible. Okay.
Oh, it's horrible. Thank you.
Thank you for calling
Bye.
in. Good night, Jim.
Bye.
Well, if anybody wants a copy of this report, which I wrote in 1996, and of course Obamacare has changed some of it, but it all still holds true, they can send me a self-addressed stamped business envelope, and I'll send them a copy of my plan. There's the address right there on your screen.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Or they can call me if they want more information.
Okay.
But if we all refuse to pay more than the Medicaid rate, healthcare, we could reduce our healthcare costs by 40%.
Well, maybe we need to form a committee.
Right, and then, well, yeah, I think we should unite, organize together. But we don't have to, Linda. That's the beauty of my plan. We can do it as individuals. It gives us the power to just say, no, I'm not paying this. Okay, now your health insurance says this is how much your health insurance is going to cost. Just say, no, I'm not going to pay that. Are they going to refuse you as a customer? Maybe.
Maybe.
Maybe not.
Well, I just figured out what I pay for the supplement to my Medicare. Of course, I pay for the Medicare too out of my
Right,
Social
yes, we
Security.
pay for that.
But just the supplement for the 20%, I spend $2,064 a year.
Isn't
for-
that awful?
For the 20% of insurance that needs to be
And for
covered.
Medicaid, for Medicare, we pay over $1,000 a year.
Yeah.
For that too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, 5 minutes left. So did
Oh.
you want to talk any more about that, or you're your wheel there, or or do you want to summarize?
Well, I just think that the government, the legislature, the Vermont legislature, is not solving the high cost of health care. They haven't done it in decades. I've been involved in this since 1977. They have not come up with any real solutions. So I think we're going to have to do it ourselves. And the beauty of my plan is you can do it yourself by just saying, why are you charging me more for the very same service that you're providing people on Medicaid? And Linda, doing this leads to discrimination. One reason why Governor Shumlin wants to increase the Medicaid rate is because he said doctors and hospitals are now refusing to treat people on Medicaid, and therefore that is discrimination. Isn't that discrimination?
That they're refusing to?
Yes, isn't that discrimination? It leads to
Well,
discrimination.
they're a customer.
And another thing, I want to say before I finish this, but Governor Shumlin, the only thing that he has really done, the only thing that the legislature has really done to help us is give us the ability to kill ourselves.
Oh, dear.
And that,
Well,
I'm not worried about being provided too much care. I'm worried about going without care because I've had to go without care. So I'm not worried.
Scary.
Yeah, I'm not worried about that. But think about it. That's the only real thing that they've done for us, is given us the right to ask for the doctor to help us to kill ourselves.
Well, if you're an older person, your expenses might be higher.
Right.
And therefore,
Right.
if you are encouraged to, hey, here's a way out, you can just do yourself in with our blessings, then there goes the expense for you.
But the sad thing is, Linda, it won't reduce healthcare costs, because if the elderly aren't paying for the services because they're dead, the costs will go up for everybody else. It's a
catch.
terrible dilemma, but the hospitals will still have the overhead costs, and the few that remain will have to make up the difference.
You know, wouldn't you think that we have a good hospital here?
Yes.
Okay? And they try to be very
They've had,
forward-looking, okay? But they're not connected with Fletcher Allen.
no, they aren't.
But Fletcher Allen's connecting with New York.
Right.
What's the problem?
They're getting a monopoly.
Yeah, and then we lose.
That's
because
right.
there's no choice. They control what you're offered. They control how much it's going to cost. And so the customer, which is you and me and other folks, we're out in the cold. We're at the mercy of the monopoly.
And that's why I say we need to take the power back into our own hands and just say, I refuse to pay more.
In ever so many ways, my dear. To take back our Constitution, to take back the respect for our flag.
Respect for life.
Yes, respect for life, and respect for the freedom that we have had in this country for so many years, that we older folks know and have lived. That's evaporating before our eyes. And that's why we need to make sure our children are taught about how lucky they are to live in this country. It's not perfect, but it's the best there is, and we can make it better if we make sure that the young people learn what we know. So I want to thank you so much for coming on the program. I don't know.
Well, Linda,
Yeah,
I
I have
really
to-
appreciate having me on the show.
I'm happy to do it. I'm glad you spoke up. Folks, thank you for tuning in. I hope you'll contact Dottie at 30 Bishop Street if you're interested in her paper that she wrote, or call her up. She's in the phone book. Dorothy Bold. Oh, you're not?
No,
Okay, don't
mine-
call her. Okay, I gotta go, folks. See you next week. And in 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about taxes. I have a great resource for you. Good night. Have a great week.